Hello, friends. I'm mighty glad you're here with me today because we're about to uncover something that's as old as the hills and twice as powerful. The secret of why people love you when you really listen. Now, I don't mean just nodding along while your mind wanders to supper or tomorrow's chores. I mean listening, truly hearing someone in a way that makes them feel like they're the only person in the world right then. It's simpler than you might think, and it's a gift that'll have folks drawn to you like moths to a flame. Let me start with a little story that got me thinking about this years ago. I once knew a fella named Bill Harper, a quiet man who ran a hardware store in a little town in Iowa. Bill wasn't much for talking. He didn't spin yarns or crack jokes, but folks flocked to him. One day, I stopped by his shop and saw him with a customer, a farmer named Ed, who'd had a rough week with a broken tractor. Ed was going on about bolts and belts, and Bill just stood there, leaning on the counter, looking right at him. No interruptions, no I've got a fix for that. Just a steady gaze and a nod now and then. When Ed finished, he shook Bill's hand and said, "Thanks for hearing me out, Bill. It means a lot." I asked Bill later, "How do you do it?" "Everyone loves you," he shrugged and said. "Dale, I just listen." They don't get that much. That stuck with me, friends. Bill didn't try to impress or out-talk anyone. He listened, and it worked like magic. People walked away from him feeling seen, understood, maybe even a little taller. And I've seen it happen time and again. When you listen like this, folks can't help but love you for it. So let's dig into what it means to listen this way. Through stories and moments that show you how it's done and how you can do it too. I'll tell you about a gal named Mary, a nurse I met in Chicago. Mary worked long shifts, tending to folks who were scared, sick, or just plain worn out. One evening, she sat with a patient, an older man named George, who had been through surgery and was feeling low. George started talking about his farm, his dog, how he missed the open air. Mary didn't rush him or check her watch. She pulled up a chair, looked him in the eye, and let him go on. "What kind of dog?" she asked at one point, and George lit up, telling her about his old hound. When she left, George grabbed her hand and said, "You're the best, Mary. Nobody listens like you." She didn't fix his pain or change his chart. She listened, and that was enough. What did Mary do that was so special? She gave George her full attention, not half her mind, not a quick while she planned her next move. She let him talk, and she showed she cared with a simple question. That's the first piece of this puzzle, friends. When you listen, give all you've got. Don't split your focus, or wait for your turn to shine. Look at them. Lean in a little. Let them have the floor. It's not about saying much, it's about hearing everything. Then there's a fella named Sam, a barber in Texas I ran into years back. Sam's shop was always buzzing, not just because he gave a good haircut, but because he had a way of making you feel like a king while you sat in his chair. One day, I watched him with a customer, a young guy named Pete, who just lost his job. Pete started spilling his troubles, the boss, the bills, the whole mess. Sam kept snipping away, but his eyes stayed on Pete. And every so often he'd say, "That sounds rough," or "How'd you handle that?" Nothing fancy, just enough to keep Pete going. When the haircut was done, Pete stood up, shook Sam's hand, and said, "Man, I feel better just talking to you." Sam grinned and said, "Anytime, Pete." Sam didn't solve Pete's problems. He didn't need to. He listened with a kind ear, tossing in a word or two, to show he was right there with him. That's another piece, friends. You don't have to fix everything. People don't always want advice or answers. They want to be heard. A little "I see" or "That something" goes a long way. It tells them you're not judging, not rushing. You're just there. And that's why they'll love you for it. Now, let me take you to a diner in Kansas where I met a waitress named Clara. Clara had a gift. She could turn strangers into regulars in one shift. One morning, I sat at her counter, and a fella named Joe came in, grumbling about a flat tire. Clara poured his coffee and said, "Tell me about it." Joe launched into the story, the rain, the jack slipping, the whole ordeal. Clara didn't interrupt or top it with her own tale. She nodded, smiled, and when he paused, she said, "You made it through that, tough guy, huh?" Joe laughed, and by the time he left, he was calling her Clara, my new best friend. What Clara did was pure gold. She let Joe feel big. She didn't steal his spotlight or shift it to herself. That's a secret worth keeping, friends. When you listen, let them shine. Don't jump in with "I had a flat once," or "Here's what I do." Let their story stand tall. Give it a little lift if you can. they'll walk away feeling good, and they'll tie that feeling to you. And here's one more for you. A story about a kid named Tommy, a paper boy in Ohio. Tommy was shy, didn't say much, but folks on his route adored him. One day I tagged along as he delivered papers, and I saw why. At one house, an old lady named Mrs. Evans came out talking about her garden, the roses, the weeds, how her knees ached. Tommy stood there, bike propped up, listening like she was telling him the secrets of the universe. "Those roses sound pretty," he said quietly. Miss S. Evans beamed and slipped him a cookie. "You're a good boy, Tommy," she said. He didn't chatter or charm. He listened, and she loved him for it. Tommy showed me something. You don't need big words or bold moves. A kid with a bike and a quiet ear can win hearts just by being there. That's the beauty of listening like this. It's not about you being clever or loud. It's about them feeling heard, and that's a bond that sticks. Well, friends, we've had quite a journey together, haven't we? We've sat with Bill at his hardware counter, watched Mary comfort George, seen Sam lift Pete with a quiet ear, smiled with Clara, as Joe turned a grumble into a grin, and stood beside Tommy while Miss S. Evans shared her roses. These folks didn't set out to win anyone over. They just listened, really listened, and that's why people love them. I hope you're seeing it now. This simple, beautiful power you've got right in your hands, ready to light up your days and the folks around you. Let's bring a few more faces into the picture, because nothing drives this home like seeing it work. I'll tell you about a gal named Ellen, a teacher in Seattle who had a way with her students. One afternoon, a shy kid named Bobby lingered after class, mumbling about a fight with his brother.